Hello and welcome back to my office again. This is the talk for the Scavengers. You'll see I've actually moved across from my desk because I've been sitting down all day and standing up makes a nice change. Odd times, aren't they? I've been out for a walk with the dog. We're allowed to go out once a day for some exercise. And apart from that, I've been spending all of my time doing other stuff. So today, for example, I've been going out and checking on a lady who lives quite close, who is one of the at-risk groups. I walk with her, keeping a good 2 to 3 yards apart, but we walk every day. That way she's saved from going stir crazy. She's a widow, so she hasn't got anybody else to talk to in her house. And it also gives me an excuse to get out with the dogs, so that's nice. I've also been spending time setting up a little internet group on Facebook for all the authors who live in the southwest. We're all members of the Crime Writers Association, and the CWA exists really for mutual support for crime writers because the money's not that good if you're a standard person. So the CWA is a brilliant little organisation, and I'm in charge of the Southwest chapter, which means that I organise for 20 odd of us to get together every 2-3 months, and we have a lunch. We have a little bit of wine each, a glass perhaps, and then we go back to our work, which is fun. And it's great fun organising it because it means that I can make sure where we're going to meet, get a good table, make sure it's going to be good food, and make sure it's on a day when I can do it. Other people don't get that advantage. Sad. So I have this nice little group. There's probably, I think, about 80 authors living in the southwest because it includes Somerset, Dorset, Devon and Cornwall. That's a wide spread. The only trouble is, of course, that now we can't have meetings. So I've set up a group on Facebook so that there's a little bit of mutual support for people who get really desperate for someone to talk to. There is somewhere they can go. The only trouble is, of course, that I set this up originally on Tuesday. I set up a group, sent out an email to all of the people and said, this is where you need to come. And then I noticed that there was a problem on the computer, so I turned it off and tried to turn it on for 24 hours. And all I got was the Apple logo and a white progress line. And that was it. It would never go further than that. So I spent several hours on Wednesday morning talking to Apple, and the conclusion was the hard disk is completely buggered, for want of a better word, and so I needed to get it into an engineering store, into an Apple shop or somewhere, which I can't do. So I was a bit stuck then, and eventually I got talking to a fellow who is known by a chap who works and lives opposite me here, and he knows an Apple expert. And I phoned this Apple expert, Simon, and Simon was able to talk me through how to fix the problem over the phone. And now I've got a working computer again. And the first thing I found was a whole bunch of emails telling me that the link I'd provided on how to get through to the CWA Southwest site didn't work. And so there were a lot of very unhappy authors who were desperate to have a chat with people and couldn't. But luckily now they can, so that's all right. This camera's gone out of focus. What's it playing at? Let's take that off. Yes, it likes me again. If I don't wear glasses, it's perfectly happy. I don't understand technology. So anyway, that's working now, thank God. It's just a closed group for crime writers living in the southwest, but there seems to be quite a lot of desperate crime writers living in the southwest who are very happy for that. Apart from that, I've been struggling trying to get the ideas down for a couple of short stories, and I've still failed. I've probably managed about 200 words this week, and I can only imagine that it's, to a large extent, the amount of time that gets spent thinking about this blasted virus and who it's affecting. I discovered this week that there's a little girl, not 10 years old, who lives just almost opposite, has got it. A guy who's not 30 has got it too. He's had it for 2 weeks. And then I discovered yesterday that A very good old friend of mine has had it for the last 3 weeks and he thought he was dying. But luckily he seems to be making a good recovery, so we just hope that'll continue. It is very, very difficult though. We all of us will know someone who's had it, and someone who's probably had it pretty badly before long. Which is not a nice thought, but the thing that I think people need to bear in mind is, although that's a very loud motorbike, although there's a lot of bad news, there's a lot of sadness with the number of families who are reporting losses, there's also a vast number of people who are recovering all the time. And let's not lose sight of that. There's not a reason for us to get overly depressed, let us say, about this. The main thing is we'll all just be damn glad when it's over. But I'm now at the stage where I am getting back into the short stories. The first one's going to be based on Beringer Fripper, In the Middle of the Black Death. That is not going to be the most hilarious romp, but I've got a storyline which really quite appeals to me, so I'm going to follow through with that and see how that turns up. I've also then got an idea which is based on two old ladies, the Mrs. King, that I knew when I was, well, it's back in the 60s, so I wasn't yet 10 years old. And they were a delightful couple who lived in a sort of retirement home with my grandmother. I only had the one grandmother by that stage. All of my grandparents died when I was about 2 and 3, apart from Grandma Jex, who lived on till I was about 13, 14. And she was a lovely lady, very bright, very sharp. And the Mrs. King was sort of similar age. They were both in their 70s when I knew them. Obviously they seemed absolutely ancient, but they were an absolutely delightful pair of sisters who had lived through the First World War. Both of them, I think, had been engaged, and both of them lost their fiancés during the war. Very sad. These things happened a lot. They never married after that either. Both of them were content to live as spinsters, living on the memories of the men that they had known. There must have been thousands of women of that type in those days, because so many men died, and there weren't enough to go around the women who survived. It's very sad. But I'm not going to write about these two in that period. I was thinking about it. I was thinking about creating a new crime series set in the 60s. But the sad fact is, trying to set any sort of crime novel at any period other than now is going to have an impact on sales. It is very sad. But the book on Shanghai, for example, which I wrote last year, I think it's a very good story. I think it's a strong plot. I like the characters. I like the location. But no publisher seems to be interested, because although the period is interesting, they want what they keep calling more edgy stories now, which means, in my terms, bleak. So fine, I'll write a bleak book. I can do that. It's sad. I think what's going to happen is I'm probably going to turn much more to books which are going straight to ebook, which is very sad, I think, but I'm more likely to get paid better with an ebook. And although I like having physical books myself, and I know most of my readers do, the sad fact is the publishers are cutting back the number of authors they will deal with at a ridiculous rate. And I can envisage a time in the not too distant future where books become as popular as vinyl records are now, i.e. really not very at all, and the majority of the market will be based on ebooks. Never thought I'd say that, but I'm afraid, sadly, I think that period is coming. People are so used to streaming videos, downloading films, not bothering with CDs or DVDs, not bothering with buying records at all, but just relying on music from Spotify or something similar. I still don't. I still like having my own music. But I'm a reactionary old git. That is the sad fact. So, it's a fairly brief report this time. I do apologise for that, but the sad fact is there's really very little to say. So I've mentioned the Beringer story. That's going to be in a collection of short stories, hopefully, before too long, so long as that collection goes ahead. I'm going to write this short story with the two ladies. That's going to be present day. I started saying it's going to be present day, based around this coronavirus, because basically I've got to write this blasted virus out of my system. Until I can get it out of my system, I won't be able to get on with anything else. As soon as that's done, I'm going to get on with the next blackjack, for the simple reason that when I've completed that, A, I'll get paid for the acceptance of the book. B, I'll also probably be able to negotiate a new contract. That means I'll get some more money in. This year that's going to be useful. I should just say that this year I'd been hired by the Smithsonian to run as an expert for a week. In fact, there was going to be for 2 weeks, with a Smithsonian Tours group going around the UK. They do these things in October, November. They have groups of about 30 people, and they have 2 sessions, starting off in Torquay, talking about Agatha Christie and everything else, and then moving all around the country, talking to where Dick Francis used to write his books, Bernard Knight writes his books, all of the other guys. And basically, as an expert, my job there is to talk about crime writing, what I do, how I do it, and how all these other people that I've not worked with, but my peers, how they did their work. And that's fun. And it pays very well. Of course, both of those tours have been cancelled. Hey-ho. I was also going to go away and teach writing for a week at the Swanwick writing course. Well, they haven't cancelled that yet, but there's no way they're going to be able to go ahead with it, I don't think, very sadly. So that's several £1,000. That's about half my income for the year has just disappeared. So getting money in is quite important. So once I've finished the blackjack, get paid for that, negotiate a new contract, then I'm going to write what I hope will be a fairly bleak, possibly moderately challenging, modern day story. Not a short story, a novel. And we'll see how that goes. But I'll be able to talk about that here on Patreon. Hopefully you'll be able to see how the story is developing and the characterisation and so on. What a year, eh? Anyway, do keep going. Thanks again for your patronage. It does make a huge difference. Thanks very much for watching these videos too, because it's a bit pointless making them if you're not going to. Do please feel free to send me any questions you've got. I'll be more than happy to answer them. I'm not going to be answering them at Swanwick or on the Smithsonian tours now. I might as well answer your questions instead. There's a thing. Thanks very much. Stay healthy, stay safe, keep away from other people, and hopefully we'll get over this thing fairly quickly. Cheers, take care. This camera doesn't like having a mug in front of my face. It loses focus every time. There you go. Right, take care folks. Cheers.